The morning light filtered through the curtains of Elena Chen's small apartment as she stared at the chess set on her coffee table. Her fingers hovered over the white queen, hesitant yet familiar. It had been 8 years since she'd played in a tournament. 8 years since she'd walked away from what many had called a promising career. The text from her friend Maya still glowed on her phone screen. Just registered you for the Westlake Open. No arguments. Time to stop hiding that brilliant brain of yours. Elena sighed, picking up the queen and feeling its weight in her palm. Maya meant well, but she had no idea what she was asking. The chess world had been Elena's whole life once until it wasn't. Now at 32, Elena was content with her quiet job at the local library, organizing books and helping eager children find adventure stories. Chess was just something she occasionally played with the elderly gentlemen in the park, never revealing how easily she could have beaten them if she'd really tried. It's just a small regional tournament, Elena told herself, though the Westlake Open was actually quite prestigious in chess circles. I'll play a few games, make Maya happy, then go back to normal life. She slipped the queen into a small velvet bag along with her own set of pieces, the only remnant she'd kept from her previous life as a rising chess star. Most of her trophies were in boxes in her parents' attic, gathering dust alongside newspaper clippings that once proclaimed her the next great hope of American chess. That afternoon, Elena stood in the grand ballroom of the Westlake Hotel, clutching her registration packet. The space buzzed with conversation, the distinctive click of chess pieces and the occasional laugh or groan. Players of all ages hunched over boards in practice games, while officials bustled about preparing for tomorrow's first round. Elena blended into the background, her straight black hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, wearing jeans and an oversized sweater that made her look even smaller than her 5'4" frame. She found comfort in being invisible, scanning the room from behind her glasses and recognizing many faces from tournaments past, though no one seemed to recognize her. Elena Chen, is that really you? She turned to find Thomas Wu, now gray-haired but with the same kind eyes she remembered from her youth. He had been a tournament organizer even back then. Mr. Wu, she smiled genuinely. It's been a long time, too long. When I saw your name on the registration list, I couldn't believe it. His eyes crinkled with warmth. Many people wondered what happened to the girl who could have been champion. Elena shifted uncomfortably. Life happened, I guess. Family needed me and priorities changed. Mr. Wu nodded understandingly. Well, the chess world is better with you in it, however long you choose to stay this time. Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden commotion at the entrance. The crowd parted like a human sea, and whispers rippled through the room. He's here. Viktor Kozlov. The Grandmaster himself. Elena didn't need to turn around to know who had arrived. Viktor Kozlov's reputation preceded him, 3-time world champion known as much for his brilliant play as for his psychological warfare against opponents. Elena had studied his games years ago, before she'd left competitive chess and had followed his rise to fame from afar. Curiosity got the better of her, and she turned slightly to catch a glimpse. Viktor stood taller than most in the room, his posture rigid with confidence that bordered on arrogance. His dark hair was styled perfectly, his expensive suit clearly custom-made. At 45, his handsome features had sharpened with age, giving him an even more intimidating presence. He scanned the room with calculating eyes, seeming to assess each potential opponent with a mere glance. When his gaze passed over Elena, it paused for just a heartbeat longer than necessary. She quickly looked away, but not before catching the dismissive smirk that crossed his face. Don't mind Viktor, Mr. Wu said quietly. His ego arrived 10 minutes before he did. Elena smiled despite herself. I've heard he can be difficult. That's putting it mildly. The man's brilliant at chess, but terrible with people, especially those he sees as beneath his level, which is basically everyone. Mr. Wu checked his watch. I should get back to the registration desk. Good luck tomorrow, Elena. It really is wonderful to see you again. As Mr. Wu walked away, Elena found a quiet corner where she could observe without being observed. She took out the tournament schedule, noting that the preliminary rounds would begin at 9 a.m. sharp. With nearly 200 participants, the field would narrow quickly over the first 2 days before the real competition began. She watched Viktor work the room, noting how younger players practically tripped over themselves for his attention. while more experienced competitors regarded him with a mixture of respect and wariness. She could almost feel the intimidation radiating from him as he casually criticized one young man's practice game. Knight to e5, that's suicide against any decent player, Victor announced loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. The young player's face flushed with embarrassment. Elena shook her head slightly. Chess had always been competitive, but there was no need for cruelty. She remembered her own teacher's words from childhood. Chess reveals character more than it builds it. A tap on her shoulder startled her. She turned to find Maya grinning widely, her bright red curls as untamed as her personality. "You actually came. I half expected to get a text with some lame excuse about a library emergency." Maya hugged her tightly. "Do libraries even have emergencies?" Elena asked, returning the hug. "I don't know. Overdue book crisis? Paper cut pandemic?" Maya laughed. "But seriously, I'm proud of you for doing this. I know it wasn't easy to come back. I'm just here to play a few games, that's all." Elena's tone made it clear she didn't want to discuss her past. Maya nodded, understanding her friend's boundaries. "Well, I brought snacks for moral support." She held up a paper bag. Chocolate-covered espresso beans, brain food. They found seats in a quiet corner where Elena could prepare mentally for tomorrow. Maya chatted about her nursing job, filling the silence while Elena half listened, her mind already slipping into the focused state she would need for the tournament. "Oh my God," Maya whispered suddenly, interrupting her own story. "Is that Victor Kozlov?" Elena didn't need to look up. "Yes, he's coming this way." "Why is he coming this way?" Maya's eyes widened. Elena glanced up to find Victor approaching their table, flanked by two younger men who carried themselves with the distinctive confidence of high-ranked players. "Ladies," Victor nodded with practiced charm that didn't reach his eyes. "Enjoying the view from the sidelines?" His Russian accent had softened from years in America but still colored his words. "I'm not playing," Maya clarified quickly. "Just supporting my friend." Victor's gaze shifted to Elena, studying her with new interest. "You're a competitor?" The surprise in his voice held a note of condescension. Elena met his eyes calmly. "Yes, interesting." He lingered on the word. "Your name?" "Elena Chen." Something flickered in his expression. Recognition, perhaps. But it passed so quickly Elena thought she might have imagined it. "Well, best of luck. Miss Chen, the amateur section can be quite challenging for beginners." He smiled thinly. Elena didn't correct his assumption. "Thank you." As Victor walked away, Maya let out a breath. "What a jerk. Did you feel that? It was like being sized up by a predator." "That's part of his strategy," Elena said quietly. "Intimidation works on many players before they even make their first move." Maya studied her friend with newfound curiosity. "You know a lot about him," Elena shrugged. "I know a lot about chess." Later that evening, Elena stood on her hotel room balcony, gazing at the city lights while her mind replayed old games, strategies, openings, and defenses she hadn't consciously thought about in years. Her fingers twitched slightly, making phantom moves on an invisible board. Tomorrow she would play again. The thought brought both anxiety and a surprising flutter of excitement she hadn't expected to feel. She told herself, and Maya, that she was just here to play a few casual games. But standing there in the cool night air, Elena couldn't deny the competitive spark that had reignited inside her. She thought of Victor's dismissive glance, his automatic assumption that she belonged in the amateur section. Part of her wanted to prove him wrong, to see the look on his face if they ever faced each other across a chessboard. "One game at a time," she whispered to herself, turning back to her room where her chess pieces waited on the hotel desk. She carefully arranged them in starting position and sat down, losing herself in the familiar patterns that had once been her whole world. Elena didn't plan to win the tournament. She didn't plan to draw attention or reignite her former career. But as her fingers caressed the smooth wooden pieces, she made one promise to herself. She would play with the full force of her ability, holding nothing back. And if that path led her to face the intimidating Grandmaster Victor Kozlov, then so be it. Elena woke before her alarm, the chess pieces still arranged on the desk where she'd left them after hours of preparation. Sunlight was just beginning to creep through the curtains as she went through her morning routine with methodical calm. A hot shower, a simple breakfast from room service, and then she carefully selected her outfit. Dark blue slacks and a plain white blouse. Nothing flashy, nothing memorable. just the way she preferred it. The tournament hall buzzed with nervous energy when she arrived. Players hunched over their boards in last-minute practice games while others sat alone with closed eyes, mentally preparing for the day ahead. The preliminary rounds would whittle down the field quickly, 5 games today, each with a 30-minute time limit. Elena checked the pairings posted on a large board near the entrance. Her first opponent would be a 16-year-old boy with a solid regional rating. Not an easy start, but she felt oddly calm as she made her way to table 43 where he already waited. Leg bouncing nervously under the table. "Hi, I'm Elena." She offered her hand. "Jin," he replied with a quick handshake. "Good luck." Elena settled into her chair, placing her lucky pieces on the board, the same set her grandfather had taught her with when she was just 5 years old. The familiar weight of the carved wood centered her as the tournament director announced the start of round 1. Jin played white, opening with a standard queen's gambit. Elena responded with moves that felt like old friends returning after a long absence. Her hands remembered what her conscious mind had filed away years ago, and she found herself falling into the rhythm of competitive play with surprising ease. 23 minutes later, Jin tipped over his king in resignation, his expression a mixture of frustration and respect. "Good game," he said. "Your knight's sacrifice was really clever." Elena smiled genuinely. "Thanks. Your opening was very strong." As Jin walked away, Elena felt a small thrill she hadn't experienced in years, the pure joy of the game itself, separate from the pressure and expectations that had driven her away from chess. She'd forgotten how much she simply loved playing. Her next 3 games followed a similar pattern. Elena's opponents, a retired math professor, a college chess team captain, and a serious-looking businessman, all underestimated her initially, then realized too late they were facing someone who played at a much higher level than the preliminary rounds usually attracted. By lunchtime, Elena had won all her morning matches, drawing curious glances from other players who began to wonder who this quiet woman was. Maya appeared with sandwiches and excitement. 4 wins. You're crushing it. Shh, Elena hushed her friend, glancing around. It's just the preliminaries. Everyone good will advance anyway. Still, Maya lowered her voice but couldn't contain her grin. I overheard some people talking about you. They're calling you the dark horse. Elena unwrapped her sandwich with deliberate focus. I'd rather fly under the radar. Too late for that. Mr. Wu told me you used to be some kind of prodigy. Why didn't you ever tell me? It was a lifetime ago. Elena's tone made it clear she didn't want to discuss it further. One more match this afternoon, then we can go to that Italian place you like for dinner. Maya studied her friend with new eyes but respected the boundary. Deal. Just promise you'll order something besides plain pasta this time. Elena's final opponent of the day was a woman in her 50s named Diane, who played with creative flair and genuine enjoyment. Their game stretched longer than Elena's previous matches, with both women appreciating each other's style. When Diane finally conceded, she laughed warmly. Best game I've played in ages. You're far too good for the preliminaries, dear. So are you, Elena replied honestly. Your bishop pair was giving me real trouble. Diane gathered her things. Well, I'll be watching your progress through the tournament. Something tells me you're going quite far. With 5 wins secured, Elena was guaranteed to advance to the next round. She packed up her pieces, ready to find Maya and escape the increasingly crowded hall. But as she stood, she noticed Viktor Kozlov leaning against a pillar nearby, watching her with undisguised curiosity. Their eyes met briefly before Elena looked away, uncomfortable with the attention. She didn't need to look back to know he was still watching as she weaved through the tables toward the exit. The next morning arrived with clearer stakes. The field had narrowed from nearly 200 players to 64, and today's matches would be longer and more challenging. Elena arrived early again, finding comfort in the quiet before the storm of competition. As she reviewed her notes from yesterday's games, a shadow fell across her table. She looked up to find Viktor Kozlov standing over her, his expression unreadable. Ms. Chen, he said as if testing her name, your games yesterday were surprising. Elena closed her notebook. Thank you, Mr. Kozlov. I wondered if you'd like to join me for coffee before the rounds begin. It wasn't really a question, despite his wording. I make it a point to know the more interesting players in my tournaments. Your tournaments? Elena raised an eyebrow slightly. Victor smiled, a practiced expression that didn't reach his eyes. A figure of speech. When you've won something 3 times, you develop a certain ownership. Elena wanted to decline, but curiosity got the better of her. All right. 1 coffee. They walked to the hotel cafe in silence, Victor nodding at the various players who greeted him with obvious awe. He ordered for both of them without asking Elena's preference, a small power move she noted, but didn't challenge. 5 wins yesterday, he said after their coffee arrived. Clean victories from what I heard. Yet I don't recall seeing your name in competitions before. Elena sipped her coffee, too bitter for her taste. I haven't played competitively in a long time. And yet you play at near master level. Victor leaned forward slightly. Most players who walk away for years don't return with such precision. Elena met his gaze directly. Chess isn't something you really forget. No, Victor agreed, studying her face. But tournament play is different from casual games. The pressure, the psychology. He gestured with long, elegant fingers. Many players break under it. Is that why you're talking to me? Elena asked calmly. To apply pressure? Victor laughed, genuinely surprised by her directness. Perhaps I'm simply curious about a player who appears from nowhere and calmly dismantles opponents without breaking a sweat. I'm hardly from nowhere. I'm from Portland. You know what I mean. Victor's voice hardened slightly. I make it my business to know every serious player in the chess world. You're an anomaly. Elena glanced at her watch. We should head back. Rounds start soon. Victor didn't move. Today's games will be harder. Casual players often get lucky in preliminaries, but now... He let the implication hang in the air. Are you trying to intimidate me, Mr. Kozlov? Not at all. Consider it friendly advice. His smile returned. Chess requires mental fortitude. Not everyone has it. Elena stood up. Thank you for the coffee. As they walked back to the tournament hall, Victor continued his subtle psychological game. I watched your 5th match yesterday. Your endgame technique needs work. Against a stronger player, those weaknesses will be exploited. Elena said nothing, which seemed to irritate him more than any response could have. Most amateurs don't realize how much they telegraph their strategies, he continued. Your face gives away your next 3 moves. They reached the pairing board where players clustered to find their assigned tables. Victor glanced at the listings. Table 7. You're playing Gregory Fisher. He's been regional champion twice. Victor's tone suggested she should be worried. If you make it past him, perhaps we'll see each other in the later rounds. Perhaps, Elena replied non-committally. Victor studied her one last time. Good luck, Ms. Chen. You'll need it. As he walked away, Elena released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The encounter had left her unsettled, which she suspected was exactly what Victor intended. She centered herself, remembering why she was here. Not to impress anyone, not to prove anything, but simply to play the game she loved. Gregory Fisher proved to be exactly as challenging as Victor had implied. A stocky man with thoughtful eyes, he played with careful precision, testing Elena's defenses with patient probes. Their game stretched for nearly 2 hours, drawing a small crowd of observers as it became clear this match was something special. When Gregory finally tipped his king in resignation, the watchers broke into spontaneous applause. Elena looked up, startled to find they had an audience. Remarkable play, Gregory said, offering his hand. That queen sacrifice was beautiful. Thank you. You made me work for every move. As Elena packed up her pieces, she noticed Victor watching from the edge of the crowd, his expression unreadable. She'd passed his first test, but she knew the real challenge was yet to come. Throughout the day, Elena continued her winning streak, though each game proved increasingly difficult. By evening, whispers followed her through the tournament hall. Players who had dismissed her yesterday now watched her games with intense focus, trying to learn her style, searching for weaknesses. As she won her final match of the day, securing her place in tomorrow's quarterfinals, Elena caught sight of Victor speaking with the tournament director, both men glancing in her direction. Whatever Victor had been expecting of her, she had exceeded it, and that seemed to bother him more than any loss could have. Maya found her near the water cooler. You're famous. Everyone's talking about you. What are they saying? Elena asked, suddenly uneasy. That you're the surprise of the tournament. That no one can figure out your style. Maya grinned. And that Victor Kozlov has been asking questions about you. Elena frowned. What kind of questions? Where you came from, whether you've played professionally before? Maya lowered her voice. Mr. Wu wouldn't tell me much, but I think there's more to your chess history than you've shared with me. Elena sighed. It's complicated, Maya. Well, whatever it is, you've got Viktor Kozlov rattled. Maya squeezed her friend's arm. And that might be the most impressive thing of all. The third day of the tournament dawned with a buzz of excitement rippling through the hotel. Overnight, Elena had become the story everyone was talking about. The mysterious woman who played with quiet brilliance, methodically defeating opponent after opponent without fanfare or celebration. Elena felt the change as she entered the breakfast area. Conversations paused briefly. Eyes followed her and whispers trailed in her wake. She grabbed a banana and coffee, finding a corner table where she could review her notes in relative peace. Mind if I join you? Mr. Wu appeared with his own breakfast tray. Elena welcomed the familiar face. Please do. Mr. Wu settled across from her, stirring his oatmeal thoughtfully. You've caused quite a stir, Elena. I haven't seen this much excitement since Lena visited 3 years ago. I'm just here to play chess, she replied, uncomfortable with the attention. Well, you're playing remarkable chess. Mr. Wu's eyes twinkled. The question everyone's asking is, where have you been all these years? Elena sighed. Living a quiet life. Working at a library. Playing casual games in the park. After the junior championship in Baltimore, you just disappeared. Many people wondered what happened to the 16-year-old girl who nearly beat Grandmaster Powell. Elena stiffened. She'd hoped no one would remember that far back. That was a long time ago. Indeed, Mr. Wu studied her face. Your secret won't stay hidden much longer. Several chess blogs have already started connecting the dots. I'm not hiding anything, Elena protested. I just don't like being the center of attention. Mr. Wu smiled kindly. Well, you're in the quarterfinals of the Westlake Open, playing better than anyone expected. Attention tends to follow excellence. As if summoned by their conversation, a tournament official approached their table with an apologetic expression. Ms. Chen, the press room is requesting a brief interview before the quarterfinals begin. As one of the surprise stories of the tournament, viewers are very interested in learning more about you. Elena's stomach tightened. I'd rather focus on my games if that's all right. The official looked disappointed but nodded. Of course. Though the tournament director mentioned it would be appreciated if you could make time later. The sponsors like human interest stories. After he left, Mr. Wu gave her a sympathetic look. You can't avoid it forever, Elena, especially if you keep winning. One game at a time, she replied, gathering her notes. I should prepare for the quarterfinals. The tournament hall had been rearranged overnight. With only 8 players remaining, the games would take place on raised platforms at the center of the room, surrounded by spectator seating. Camera crews had set up to broadcast the matches online and to screens throughout the hotel. Elena's stomach knotted at the sight. This was exactly the kind of attention she'd been avoiding for years. Her quarterfinal opponent was a college professor named Richard Tanner, known for his aggressive attacking style. As they set up their pieces, he offered a friendly smile. Quite the spotlight, isn't it? Nothing like having every move scrutinized by hundreds of viewers. Elena arranged her pieces with deliberate calm. I prefer to focus on the board. Hard to ignore the audience, though. Richard gestured to the growing crowd. I hear Viktor Kozlov himself will be watching our match. Apparently he's taken a particular interest in your games. Elena said nothing, but her eyes briefly scanned the audience. Sure enough, Viktor sat in the front row, his intense gaze fixed on her rather than the board. The match began. Richard played white, opening with an aggressive king's gambit that immediately put pressure on Elena. She responded cautiously, focusing on developing her pieces and strengthening her defenses rather than accepting his offered pawn. 50 minutes into the game, Elena found herself in a difficult position. Richard had sacrificed a bishop to create a dangerous attack against her king, and spectators leaned forward in anticipation. Elena took a deep breath, blocking out the cameras and whispers. Seeing only the board before her, there was a solution, a counter-sacrifice that would transform the position entirely, but it required precise calculation, 10 moves ahead. Elena closed her eyes for a moment, visualizing the sequence, then made her move with quiet confidence. Richard's expression shifted from triumph to concern as the implications of her move became clear. 3 exchanges and 5 moves later, his attack had dissolved, and Elena's position stood stronger than ever. When Richard finally resigned an hour later, spontaneous applause broke out among the spectators. Elena nodded respectfully to her opponent and quickly left the stage, avoiding the cameras that swung toward her. She found a quiet corner in the lobby, needing a moment to decompress before the next round. The semi-finalist would be announced after all quarterfinal matches finished. Her phone buzzed with a text from Maya. "You're trending on chess Twitter. Someone posted an old article about you from 2008. The secret's out." Elena's heart sank. She opened her browser and quickly found what Maya meant. A chess blogger had connected her to her past, posting scans of old tournament reports and a faded photograph of her as a teenage chess prodigy. "Elena Chen, the return of the forgotten prodigy," read the headline. The article described her meteoric rise through junior championships, her famous near victory against Grandmaster Powell, and her subsequent disappearance from competitive chess after a family tragedy. Elena closed the browser, a knot forming in her throat. She'd never wanted this spotlight again, the expectations and pressure that had once crushed her young spirit. Chess had been pure joy until it became weighted with others' hopes and dreams. "Ms. Chen." The voice behind her was unmistakable. Elena turned to find Viktor Kozlov standing there, holding his phone with the same article displayed on the screen. "Quite an interesting read," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "You never mentioned you were the Elena Chen." "It wasn't relevant." "Not relevant." Victor's eyebrows rose. "A child prodigy who vanished after nearly defeating Paul Powell, returning after 15 years to dominate a major tournament?" "I'd say that's extremely relevant." Elena met his gaze steadily. "I'm just here to play chess. Why now?" Victor's eyes narrowed. "After all this time, why return to competitive play?" "My friend registered me." Elena smiled slightly. "I didn't intend to come back at all." Victor studied her with new intensity. "Your technique has matured, improved even despite your absence from tournaments. You've been studying." It wasn't a question, but Elena answered anyway. "I never stopped playing. I just stopped competing. Because of your father's death." Victor's voice softened slightly. "The article mentioned he passed just before the national championship." Elena's face tightened. "I'd prefer not to discuss that." Victor nodded once, accepting the boundary. "The semifinals will be announced soon. If the brackets fall as expected, we'll be facing each other tomorrow." "If that happens, I'll play my best game," Elena replied simply. Victor's smile held a new edge. "Your best was impressive at 16. But chess at this level isn't just about talent or even practice. It's psychological warfare. Experience matters." He leaned closer. "And I have 15 years of experience you sacrificed." Before Elena could respond, they were interrupted by a tournament official. "Ms. Chen? The press is quite insistent about that interview now that your background has come to light. Would you reconsider?" Victor answered before she could. "Ms. Chen will be available after the semifinals. Right now she needs to prepare." He turned to Elena. "Isn't that right?" Elena nodded, momentarily grateful for the intervention despite its presumptuous nature. After the official left, Victor's expression hardened. "The spotlight is back on you, Elena Chen. Tomorrow, we'll see if you still wilt under its heat like you did 15 years ago." The semi-final pairings were announced an hour later, confirming what Victor had predicted. Elena would face him in the second semi-final match tomorrow afternoon. The news spread quickly through the tournament hall, creating a buzz of anticipation. The former prodigy versus the reigning Grandmaster had become the match everyone wanted to see. Maya found Elena in the hotel garden, sitting alone on a bench. "There you are. I've been looking everywhere." Maya dropped beside her. "So teenage chess prodigy, huh? Were you ever planning to tell me?" Elena looked at her friend apologetically. "It never seemed important? Not important?" Maya's eyes widened. "Elena, the article says you were on track to become one of the youngest female grandmasters in history before you quit. And then my dad died suddenly, and none of it mattered anymore." Elena's voice was quiet but firm. "Chess was our thing. Without him, it just hurt too much." Maya's expression softened. "I'm sorry. I didn't know. No one did. I walked away and never looked back." Elena sighed. "Until you signed me up for this tournament. Are you mad at me?" Elena considered the question. No, I thought I would be, but playing again has reminded me how much I love the game itself. Not the attention or the pressure, just the pure challenge of it. Maya squeezed her hand. So what now? You're facing Viktor Kozlov tomorrow. Now I go to my room and study his games. Elena stood with newfound determination. He thinks my years away from competition make me weak. But he doesn't understand what I've been doing all this time, which is, a small smile curved Elena's lips, playing chess without fear, without pressure, without anything riding on the outcome except the joy of the game itself. Her eyes took on a distant focus, and analyzing every major game played in the last 15 years, including all of Viktor's. Back in her hotel room, Elena spread her notes across the bed, years of observations and analysis she'd compiled during her time away from competition. While the world thought she had abandoned chess, she had instead developed a deeper understanding of it from a distance, free from the pressures of tournament play. Among her notes were dozens of pages dedicated to Viktor Kozlov's games, his patterns, preferences, weaknesses, the subtle tells in his play when he was confident versus when he felt threatened. Most importantly, she had identified a recurring vulnerability in his middle game strategy, one that appeared only when he faced certain types of positions. As midnight approached, Elena carefully arranged the chess pieces on her travel board, reconstructing critical positions from Viktor's recent tournaments. Tomorrow would be the ultimate test of whether her unique path, stepping away from competition while continuing to study the game, had made her stronger or weaker. Her phone buzzed with another text from Maya. Just heard Viktor telling reporters he'll make an example of your outdated skills. What a jerk. Elena smiled, setting down her phone without replying. Let Viktor underestimate her. Let him believe her years away from tournament play had dulled her edge. Tomorrow would reveal the truth. The morning of the semifinals brought a change to the tournament hall. Overnight, the organizers had transformed the space, adding more seating around the central playing area and setting up additional cameras. A small table with microphones stood to one side for post-game interviews. The Westlake Open had suddenly become a much bigger event than usual, largely due to Elena's unexpected story. Elena arrived early, hoping to center herself in the quiet before the crowds arrived. But the hall wasn't empty. Viktor Kozlov sat alone at one of the boards, reviewing notes with intense focus. He looked up as she entered, his expression unreadable. Ms. Chen, you're early. So are you, she replied, keeping her distance. I like to feel the space before a significant match. Viktor closed his notebook, to own the battlefield, so to speak. Elena set her bag down at a table far from his. Is that what this is to you? A battle? Chess is always a battle. Viktor stood, straightening his already immaculate suit. Of intellects, of wills, of nerve. Especially today. It's still just a game, Elena said quietly. Viktor laughed, a sharp sound without humor. A game, perhaps that's why you walked away. You never understood what chess truly is. And what is it, according to Viktor Kozlov? A mirror that reveals who we really are. He approached her table slowly. Today we'll see what 15 years of hiding has done to your game. Has playing against park amateurs kept your edge sharp enough for a real opponent? Elena met his gaze steadily. I guess we'll find out. Viktor smiled thinly. Indeed we will. My match begins in an hour. Yours is scheduled immediately after. He glanced at the gallery seating. They're expecting quite a crowd. The return of the prodigy versus the reigning champion. It makes for compelling drama. I'm not interested in drama, Elena said firmly. Just chess. That's not up to you anymore. Viktor's tone was almost pitying. Your story is out there. The spotlight has found you again. The only question is whether you'll crumble beneath it, again. He walked away, leaving Elena with a familiar knot of anxiety in her stomach. This was exactly what she'd wanted to avoid. The pressure, the expectations, the feeling of being watched and judged by countless eyes. For a moment, she considered simply walking out, returning to her quiet life at the library. Instead, she pulled out her notebook and focused on her preparation. Viktor was trying to unsettle her, to make her doubt herself. She wouldn't give him that satisfaction. By noon, the hall had filled to capacity. Chess enthusiasts, local players, and even a few celebrities known for their love of the game packed the seats. A hushed excitement rippled through the crowd as Viktor's semi-final match began against a young international master named Raj Patel. Elena watched from the sidelines, studying Victor's body language as much as his moves. He played with theatrical confidence, making each move with a flourish and occasional glances toward the audience. His style was aggressive and dominating, putting constant pressure on his younger opponent. Raj fought valiantly but ultimately crumbled under Victor's relentless attack. When the match ended after just under 2 hours, applause thundered through the hall. Victor stood to acknowledge the crowd with a practiced smile, every inch the champion they expected. The tournament director stepped forward with a microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, Viktor Kozlov advances to tomorrow's final. And now, our second semifinal match. International Master Elena Chen versus Grandmaster Viktor Kozlov. Elena's heart skipped. She stepped onto the platform, aware of hundreds of eyes following her movement. The whispers grew as people realized what was happening. Wait, Kozlov's playing again? Back-to-back matches? The tournament director explained. Due to scheduling conflicts with tomorrow's hall availability, we've had to compress our semi-final and final rounds. As the top-seeded player, Mr. Kozlov has agreed to play consecutive matches today, with the final to follow tomorrow morning. Elena understood immediately what had happened. Victor had arranged this, ensuring she would face him after he was already warmed up and in rhythm, while also demonstrating his stamina and confidence. Another psychological tactic. They sat across from each other, the familiar chessboard between them like a battlefield. The arbiter conducted the drawing of colors. Elena would play white, having the first move advantage. Good luck, Victor said loud enough for nearby spectators to hear. You'll need it after my warm-up match. Elena made her first move without responding to his taunt. She'd chosen an opening she rarely played, wanting to take Victor out of his preparation. His eyebrows rose slightly, the first hint of surprise before he responded with a solid defensive setup. For the first 30 minutes, they played quickly, moving through familiar opening patterns with the confidence of masters who had studied chess their entire lives. The audience watched in hushed appreciation as the position grew increasingly complex. On move 17, Elena deliberately created tension in the center of the board, challenging Victor to a tactical skirmish he would normally welcome. He leaned forward, spending several minutes calculating the consequences before making a slightly conservative choice. Elena noted the hesitation. This was not the same Victor who had just steamrolled his previous opponent. He was being cautious with her, showing a respect he hadn't verbally expressed. At move 26, Elena sacrificed a knight for 2 pawns, changing the structure of the game. A murmur ran through the audience. It wasn't an obvious move. The material balance favored Victor, but Elena had gained a positional advantage that would only become apparent several moves later. Victor spent 14 minutes on his next move, his fingers drumming lightly on the table, a habit she'd noticed in videos of his games when he felt pressure. The crowd grew restless during the long pause, but Elena remained perfectly still, her focus unwavering. After 2 hours, they had reached the middle game, where Elena had planned to target Victor's subtle weakness. She set a trap based on his tendency to overprotect his king at the expense of development. It wasn't an obvious trap. It would appear to most observers that she was simply developing her pieces. But Elena had spent years analyzing this specific pattern in Victor's play. Victor, feeling the pressure of time and the unexpected challenge Elena presented, made exactly the move she had anticipated. The trap was set. 3 moves later, Elena initiated a devastating combination that would take 7 moves to complete. After her second move in the sequence, Victor's expression changed. He saw it now, the trap he had walked into, the combination that would leave his king exposed and his position in tatters. He spent nearly 20 minutes on his next move, searching desperately for a defier. Say the crowd watching in stunned silence as the unthinkable became possible. Viktor Kozlov might actually lose. Victor finally made his move, choosing the best defense available, though it still left him at a disadvantage. Elena continued her attack with quiet precision, each move following the analysis she had prepared the night before. On move 39, Elena sacrificed her queen, the most powerful piece on the board, in a breathtaking move that drew gasps from the audience and chess commentators alike. It appeared reckless, even desperate to the untrained eye. Victor's face revealed the moment he understood. His queen was lost as well, and his king would be exposed to a devastating attack from Elena's remaining pieces. The sacrifice wasn't desperate, it was brilliant. 3 moves later, Victor's position had collapsed entirely. He stared at the board in disbelief, his carefully constructed defenses shattered by Elena's precise calculation. The hall had gone completely silent. No one moved or spoke as Victor studied the hopeless position before him. After 5 tense minutes, he reached out and tipped over his king, the universal sign of resignation. The silence held for 1 heartbeat longer before the audience erupted in thunderous applause. Elena had done the impossible. She had defeated Viktor Kozlov, the reigning world champion, in a game that would be studied and admired for years to come. Elena sat perfectly still, almost unable to believe it herself. Across the board, Victor's face was a mask of controlled shock. "Congratulations," he said finally, his voice tight. "That was an unexpected." Elena offered her hand. "Thank you for a challenging game." Victor hesitated before shaking it briefly. The sacrifice was impressive. As they stood, cameras flashed and reporters pressed forward. The tournament director approached with a beaming smile. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have our first finalist. Elena Chen defeats Viktor Kozlov in what might be the game of the tournament. Elena will advance to tomorrow's final against Raj Patel." Victor stepped away from the board, but not before leaning close to Elena. "This isn't over," he murmured, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "One lucky game doesn't make you my equal." Elena watched him walk off the platform, his back rigid with suppressed fury. She understood his reaction. For someone who had built his identity around being the best, losing to a player who had been absent from competition for 15 years was more than a defeat. It was a humiliation. Reporters surged around Elena, questions coming from all directions. "How does it feel to defeat the world champion in your comeback tournament? Was the queen sacrifice planned or inspired in the moment? Where have you been all these years? Will you return to professional chess full-time now?" Elena answered politely but briefly, her mind still processing what had just happened. She hadn't come here seeking victory or acclaim. She hadn't even planned to play competitive chess again. Yet somehow she found herself in the finals of a major tournament, having just defeated the very player who had tried to intimidate and dismiss her. As she finally escaped the press and made her way back to her hotel room, Elena felt something she hadn't experienced in 15 years. The pure joy of chess played at its highest level, without fear, without doubt. Whatever happened in tomorrow's final, she had already reclaimed something she thought was lost forever. Sleep didn't come easily to Elena that night. Her mind replayed the semifinal match over and over, analyzing moves and counter-moves, seeing Victor's face when he finally realized defeat was inevitable. She'd achieved something remarkable. Yet instead of satisfaction, she felt strangely hollow, as if standing at a crossroads without knowing which path to take. A soft knock at her door pulled her from these thoughts. It was nearly midnight. Elena opened the door to find Maya holding 2 ice cream sundaes and wearing a mischievous grin. "I figured you might be overthinking instead of celebrating," Maya said, pushing past Elena into the room. "So I brought brain freeze as a solution." Elena accepted the ice cream with a grateful smile. "How did you know?" "Because I've known you for 5 years, and you've never been good at enjoying your victories." Maya flopped onto the armchair by the window. "You just beat the chess world champion, and I bet you're in here second-guessing every move instead of popping champagne." "Not every move," Elena said, taking a small bite of ice cream. "Just the 32nd, Maya pointed her spoon accusingly. "See? This is why you need me. Normal people don't analyze their triumphs to death." They ate in comfortable silence for a moment before Maya spoke again, her tone gentler. "What happens after tomorrow? After the final?" It was the question Elena had been avoiding. "I go back to the library. Back to normal life. Is that what you want, really?" Elena stared out the window at the city lights. "I don't know anymore. Chess was my whole world once, and then suddenly it wasn't. I've built a different life now." "A quieter life," Maya noted. "But is it the right life for you?" Elena didn't have an answer. Not yet. Morning came too quickly. Elena prepared methodically for the final match, trying to focus on her young opponent, Raj Patel, rather than the weight of expectation now resting on her shoulders. The chess blogs had exploded overnight with analysis of her victory over Victor, with many calling it one of the greatest comeback stories in chess history. The tournament hall was even more crowded than the day before. Elena spotted camera crews from major networks. Apparently her match with Victor had gone viral in chess circles and beyond. She kept her head down, avoiding eye contact as she made her way to the playing area. Raj waited at the board, looking both nervous and excited. At 23, he was considered a rising star in chess, having earned his international master title at 20. Facing Elena in the final was both an honor and an opportunity for him. "Good luck today," he said with genuine warmth as they shook hands. "You too," Elena replied. "Your semi-final game against Chen was impressive." The arbiter conducted the drawing of colors. Raj would play white. As they set up their pieces, Elena noticed Victor standing at the edge of the spectator area, arms crossed, face unreadable. Their eyes met briefly before she returned her attention to the board. The final began. Raj played a solid opening, clearly well prepared. Elena responded with equally careful moves, neither player taking unnecessary risks in the early game. The audience watched in appreciative silence, many using PHA. Ones to follow computer analysis of the position. An hour into the game, the position remained balanced. Raj played thoughtfully, showing respect for Elena's abilities without being intimidated. She found herself enjoying the game. Her young opponent played with creativity and joy, reminding her of herself at his age. During a particularly complex middle game sequence, Elena glanced up and noticed Victor still watching intently. But now he wasn't alone. A small girl, perhaps 9 or 10 years old, stood beside him, looking at Elena with undisguised admiration. The sight momentarily distracted Elena. Who was this child? Why was she with Victor? She refocused on the game, but the image lingered in her mind. 3 moves later, Raj made a slight inaccuracy, creating an imbalance in the position. Elena capitalized, immediately, launching a kingside attack that put sudden pressure on the young player. Raj defended valiantly, finding resourceful moves to hold his position together. Elena pressed her advantage with precision, converting it into a winning endgame position after nearly 3 hours of play. When Raj finally extended his hand in resignation, the crowd erupted in applause. Elena had won the Westlake Open in her first tournament after 15 years away from competitive chess. The tournament director approached with the trophy and a check, cameras flashing as Elena accepted both with a gracious smile. Raj stood beside her for the photos, his disappointment at losing tempered by the knowledge he had played well against an extraordinary opponent. "Congratulations," he said sincerely. "Your endgame technique is something else. I'll be studying this match for months." "You played beautifully," Elena told him. "You have a bright future ahead." As the crowd began to disperse, Elena found herself surrounded by admirers seeking autographs and selfies. Chess might be a niche sport to the general public, but within this world she had suddenly become a star again. When she finally extracted herself from the crowd, Elena spotted Victor still standing at the edge of the room, the young girl beside him. To her surprise, he was walking toward her. "Congratulations, Miss Chen." Victor's voice carried none of the bitterness she had expected. "A well-deserved victory." "Thank you," Elena replied cautiously. Victor gestured to the girl beside him. "This is my daughter, Sophia. She insisted on meeting you after watching your games online." The girl stepped forward, eyes wide with excitement. "Your queen sacrifice yesterday was amazing. I've been trying to learn chess from my dad, but he's not a very patient teacher." Victor's expression softened with obvious affection for his daughter. "Perhaps Ms. Chen would be a better instructor." Elena looked at him in surprise. "I'm not a teacher." "But you could be." Victor's tone was different now, lacking its earlier arrogance. "Chess needs people who understand the game as you do, especially for young players." He placed a hand on his daughter's shoulder. "Sophia attends the chess academy I established 3 years ago. We provide training for talented children from all backgrounds." "That sounds wonderful," Elena said, genuinely impressed. "We're always looking for instructors who can inspire our students." Victor handed her a business card. "If you're interested, call me. Your perspective would be valuable." Before Elena, could respond, Victor was pulled away by reporters eager for his comments on the tournament. His daughter lingered a moment longer. "Will you keep playing in tournaments now?" Sophia asked hopefully. "I don't know yet," Elena answered honestly. "You should," the girl said with childlike certainty. "You make chess look beautiful." Those simple words stayed with Elena long after the girl had rejoined her father. You make chess look beautiful. Wasn't that why she had fallen in love with the game in the first place? Not for victory or acclaim, but for the beauty and truth found within 64 squares. Maya found her sitting alone in the now empty tournament hall, trophy beside her, lost in thought. "There's my champion. Ready to celebrate?" Maya paused, studying Elena's face. "What's wrong? You won." "I'm just thinking about what comes next," Elena said quietly. "Back to the library on Monday?" Maya sat beside her friend. Elena shook her head slowly. "I don't think so, at least not full-time." "Really?" Maya couldn't hide her surprise. "What changed?" "I did." Elena looked at the chessboard still set up from the final match. "Or maybe I just remembered who I used to be before I got lost." "So what will you do?" Elena picked up the business card Victor had given her. "There's a chess academy that needs instructors, kids who love the game and want to learn from someone who sees beyond winning and losing." Victor Kozlov's academy, Maya read over Elena's shoulder. "The guy who tried to intimidate you." "People can surprise you." Elena smiled slightly. "Sometimes they even surprise themselves." 3 months later, Elena stood before a class of 12 eager students at the Kozlov Chess Academy. Their faces, ranging from 8 to 16 years old, watched her with rapt attention as she demonstrated a famous endgame position on the large demonstration board. "Chess isn't just about winning," she told them, moving the pieces with careful precision. "It's about finding beauty in complexity. It's about seeing patterns others miss. Sometimes it's about making sacrifices to create something greater." From the doorway, Victor observed silently. Since the tournament, their relationship had evolved into a cautious professional respect. He had been genuinely surprised when Elena accepted his offer to teach at the academy, but even more surprised by the impact she had on the students, especially those who struggled with confidence or anxiety around competition. After class, as the students packed up their boards, Victor approached. "Your teaching method is unconventional." "Is that a criticism?" Elena asked, gathering her notes. "An observation." Victor leaned against a desk. "Most instructors focus on openings, tactics, winning. You talk about beauty, creativity, resilience. Those things matter too." Victor nodded slowly. "I'm beginning to see that." He hesitated before continuing. "The International Chess Federation has invited me to organize a special tournament focusing on young female players. They're trying to address the gender imbalance in competitive chess." "That's wonderful," Elena said. "They've asked me to suggest a tournament director, someone who understands both the technical aspects of chess and the psychological challenges young players face." Victor met her eyes directly. "I recommended you." Elena stared at him in surprise. "Me? But I've only just returned to the chess world." "Perhaps that's exactly why you're the right choice. You see things differently." Victor straightened his jacket. "Think about it. The chess world needs voices like yours, people who remember that behind every game is a human being with dreams and doubts." As he walked away, Elena looked around the classroom where chess sets still lay open, pieces frozen in mid-battle. In each position, she saw not just moves and counter-moves, but stories. Stories of struggle and creativity, of growth and learning. She hadn't planned to return to chess, hadn't intended to become a teacher or a tournament director or anything but a quiet librarian with a past she'd tried to forget. Yet somehow the game had drawn her back, not to the spotlight she'd once feared, but to a place where she could share what she'd learned in her years away from competition. Chess had given her so much: discipline, beauty, friendship. Now, finally, she was ready to give something back. Elena gathered her belongings and stepped outside into the sunshine. For the first time in 15 years, she felt completely at peace with who she was. Not just the prodigy who disappeared, not just the champion who returned, but someone who had found her own way back to the game she loved on her own terms. And that, she realized, was the most beautiful victory of all.